Hi, welcome back to Forgotten Curiosities. My name is Pooja, and I like to make stuff. I like weird stuff that is just grabbed a hold of my brain and won't let go, and that I need to have in my life. And as you can see in the process, I generally make a giant mess. So I thought today we could do a little body doubling cleaning session, and I'm going to chat about inspiration and creativity, of where I get it and where I would like to get it in the future, and the kinds of projects that have gotten their claws into me. So if body doubling is something that you are into, join me. Now is the time. Let's get something done. And think about where we get our ideas and inspiration from. I think in my case, the biggest and most important place of inspiration has been books. I've always been a voracious reader, mostly science fiction and fantasy, also romance of the science fiction and fantasy genres. And it's just, there's something about putting myself into these worlds that authors create, and that leap that it takes for you to take the words from the page and build it out visually for yourself in your mind, that resonates with me. And it really is this kind of inspiration of like, oh, that sounds so cool. What would that look like? And then I fall in love with the idea of that. And the next thing you know, I'm making a file cabinet, a steamer trunk. I don't remember why I decided that, or rather, I don't remember the inciting incident that got me into the idea of redoing my entire office into that style. But once it took a hold, it was just like a steamroll of like going into different things and figuring out the specifics, the aesthetic and color schemes and all of that kind of stuff. And I know that it started with a book, because so many of my best and most loved ideas do. And it doesn't just have to be, straight written novels or short stories or whatever. Graphic novels are such an amazing bridge there too, because you're getting the visuals, but in the static, oftentimes there won't be a ton of detail in physical objects in graphic novels. And I love the idea and the process of going through, and it's like, what else would be there? If I was in this world, what would I be doing? What would my house look like? What would my workspace look like? All of that kind of stuff is just phenomenal to me. And I could talk about books all day, every day. I do. You can ask any of my friends who constantly get regaled with the latest in whatever book I'm obsessed with at the moment. But so that's one of the main places I get creative ideas from, or as a jumping off point to start researching into different design styles or time periods or anything like that. I think another one that a lot of people can relate to is TV and movies. And there's something like, and this is a crossover with what I do for my day job, and the stories that we're telling and what costumes and props and sets and all of that have to say about characters and the world, and how much heavy lifting those items do in terms of world building, especially when you start talking about science fiction and fantasy once again, because those are the things I love the most. You could go out, and right now, I know that so many people, and I find it so great, have gotten newly into fantasy thanks to the World of Time television show and the Rings of Power. And there are so many channels and so many people talking about the intricacy of, say, the costumes in Wheel of Time and what they are saying about every single one of those characters and foreshadowing and all kinds of amazing, amazing detail and thought went into them. And so it makes perfect sense that people can look at that and use that as a jumping off point for their own ideas, whether that be, smaller decorative things in their house, or things like clothing or costumes, or an entire reinvention of self. I'm not judging. I've definitely been influenced in how I think about myself. And I think it's part of the power of art, right? Is that we can look at what other people are putting out there and it makes us think and feel and question our own lives and our own worlds and what we want to see and what we want our world to be and what we can do to make that happen. Not just in the crafting space, but in how we relate to other people and making our own communities. And I will say also that one of the places I started getting a lot of creative ideas from as an adult when I got back into crafting as a specific hobby was anime. Because it's so easy to get sucked into this high emotion, high tension stories and want to honor that. So I used to make costumes for myself, and that's how I got back into sewing as an adult. And it's just so satisfying, and all the little details and getting things completely right. And it's just not just for myself, but for other people. And it's been such a fulfilling and satisfying thing to do that is not just about, I think creativity and inspiration is not just about making something brand new or how much you diverge from your original inspiration, but can also be about how much time, effort, and love you've put into something that is what you loved so much about a specific show. And we see it all the time, right? Like these cosplayers who are really embodying characters that we'd really only seen as part of a video game or an anime or a manga or anything, right? It's such a narrow scope that we originally have, and they take that and bring it to life in a way that I just have so much respect for cosplayers and the people who are making all of those like costumes and props to go with them and the makeup and hair and everything. It's just so much work out of love. It is a love for a character, and I really think that comes through. And that's what I want to come through in my own work. I don't want to make things just for the sake of. I really need to feel passionately about my projects in order to get them done. Because that's how I work as a person. If I don't really care, if it's only something I'm kind of whatever about, I may never start it, or if I start it, I definitely don't finish it. And then if I do somehow make myself finish it, I just meh. And it forever reminds me that I wasn't that into it. It rarely grows on me afterwards. I need to have that spark of joy and love and like obsession, in a sense, with an idea in order to really see it come to life and love it afterwards. Which is also true of another major place where I get my inspiration from, which is tabletop role-playing games. For those of you who haven't come to my channel from my other projects, I am a TTRPG performer. I stream and am on the podcast for Happy Jack's RPG, 12-Sided Stories, and on Queen's Court's Games. And I love it. I've been doing it for many, many years now. And it's so so much fun to tell these stories with a group of people. Like the amount, like collaborative storytelling in general, I think is just such a phenomenal community building event and bonding event with everybody at the table. And I've been so lucky to have the opportunity to play and tell stories with some amazing artists in their own right. I just am constantly wowed by the stories that we're telling, the ideas that people have and how we play off of each other. And that commitment oftentimes sparks creativity for me in other areas. So I make costume pieces to go along with some of my characters in our games. And one of the phenomenal things about that to me is that then afterwards, I have this artifact of this wonderful time in my life that I can look at later. I can wear to different places. I've got costumes that I later on wore to places like Ren Fair, or I wear them for photo shoots. I did I got invited by a good friend of mine to be in a photo shoot last year, and I was able to put together a costume in 20 minutes because just pulling things from different items that I had made for other characters in tabletop role-playing games, and we just had a really fun time. And it's that sense of stretching yourself to embody a character that you have created, that also just the act of creating your own character and your own story can really give you that connection and spark a lot more. If you're looking for something to get invested in, have a character in a longer term tabletop role-playing campaign, whether that's Dungeons and Dragons, whether that's Pathfinder, or any of the Powered by Apocalypse games, Mask, or maybe you're a horror role player and you want to tell stories about Cthulhu. So there's Call of Cthulhu and all its many different iterations. I love TTRPGs. Go out there, find the one that works for you, because there are systems for everyone, including solo journaling ones. So if you are just wanting some prompts for journaling, that they're out there and they're phenomenal. Another place where I historically, can you even say that about your own life? Oh well, I'm claiming it. Historically gotten inspiration from is traveling. Obviously, with things happening in the world, I haven't done as much traveling the last few years as I would have wanted to. But that doesn't stop me from being able to go out, whether it be searching just places or searching for places that I want to visit and looking at photos and videos and the history and architecture and all of that kind of stuff of these places that I'm interested in and learning more about them. I can do that from the comfort of my own home. Or I can go out to, I live in a large city, so I'm able to go out and see different parts of it that have vastly different looks and vibes than the neighborhood that I live in. Or where I grew up, I could drive about an hour and a half, and there was an amazing full city that had a completely different history and vibe and is incredibly inspirational, not just to me, but to a lot of people. So I like that in part because, not because I want to like wholesale lift some other culture's like art or cultural touchstones into my own, but because learning about other people and seeing what was important to them and what is important to them, both in their architecture and how places are set up and all of that, is another thing that makes me think about what I want my life to look like, what I want to have in my world. And a lot of times I will get like really, really specific things I'll latch onto those. I think a really good example of a thing that recently I have become really, really invested in is Art Nouveau. I saw a piece of architecture in that style, and while the broader spectrum of Art Nouveau doesn't speak to me all that much, it's the idea of organic curves and lines, and the way that it incorporates, like the theory of it incorporates living things and evoking those asymmetric and curved. I kind of wish I was recording this video right now, because what I'm doing with my hands would explain it a lot better. But it's that sense that I took away from that, and I've done, and I deep dive rabbit holed into different looks and the history of it. And then I found some really interesting things on people taking Art Nouveau into the future and how that influenced different designs of games and movies and things like that. So that's my current rabbit hole, and how I think travel can really give you a source of inspiration. And hopefully I will in the future be able to travel a lot more and get that firsthand. But until then, I still have the great wide internet, and that can give you a lot. So in terms of what I do with all of that inspiration, I generally, and my process changes from project to project and depending on what craft I'm working in. But in the broader scheme, y'all have seen that I do some painting. I am not a fine art painter. I'm definitely not trained in it, but I know enough to get by and to do the things that I want to do. And if I have a project later on that calls for more intricate painting, which I'm pretty sure I do, so I'm going to have to learn. And that's how it goes for me. I have learned every skill that I have because there has been a project that I desperately need to do, and I don't know how yet. And that's where the passion comes in, right? So if I am passionate enough about the project, then I am also passionate about learning how to do it. So I can learn leatherworking. I briefly alluded to it in the filing cabinet video, but the project that I learned leatherworking for originally were making, I had to make some holsters for the Han Solo blasters. So I learned the very basics there, how to, wet mold and punch and sew, and then how to basically dye the leather into the color that you wanted. Later on, I was going to an event. It was a fantasy ball, and so I made some leather armor for this elf character that I had come up with, and learned to stamp designs on it. And I dyed it a different color, and I was attaching different pieces to it. It was kind of that piece was inspired by the movie version of Roman armor. So nothing at all accurate, but that's just where my head was at the time. And was it perfect? Absolutely not. But did it work amazingly for that night and set me on this place where I really wanted to learn that skill more? Absolutely. So then I had a character in a tabletop role-playing game who they had a war belt that they wore. So I wanted it to look And they were part of a sailing team. We were not pirates, but pirates. So based on the idea I had for that character, I made them a war belt, and I learned to carve leather in order to put the designs on it that I wanted to see. And so it's just like a constant leveling up of my skills based on the projects that I am most obsessed about at the time. And so outside of painting and leatherworking, I did some foam sculpting, carving work. I learned to do fondant overnight because I had something that really needed to get done on a deadline. Wasn't originally a project that I was going to do, but things happened. The one that I have the most experience in and the most time invested into that process is definitely sewing. Most of my experience in sewing has been costumes, whether that's for myself or other people, but I have made some just clothing pieces for myself, and it is definitely something I'm more interested in doing as a way of expressing my own style and personality in pieces that I'm invested in, that I know will stand the test of time. And I'm definitely guilty of going to buy fabric for a project and then falling in love with different fabric at the store or while I'm searching online. And so buying a bunch of fabric I don't necessarily have anything in mind for. So honestly, I've got a bunch of stash fabrics that either I've bought or were given to me and I need to use. I have a project coming up for the channel where I actually use one of those pieces. Like I found this amazing embroidered linen at Mood Fabrics when I was looking for, oddly enough, a lace for a beaded corset I was making a few years ago. And I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with the look of it. I fell in love with the feel of it. And it's so gorgeous. The weight. Oh, just everything about it. I love this fabric. Unfortunately, I love it so much that I haven't been able to use it yet. But I found a couple of weeks ago, I don't even know how. I think I was watching YouTube and I saw somebody making, it was a sew along for one of their patterns. So I checked it out and I ended up checking out the website and I found what I really think is going to be the perfect pattern, or one of the perfect patterns to use for this fabric. So this is the impetus, this is the spark, right? Is, oh my God, that's so cool. Also, it's perfect for summer, so I definitely need to get on that as the weather warms up, all of that kind of stuff. So expect to see that coming up. And along with, I do the same thing with my other crafts. I also, like so many people, during lockdown, I learned how to knit. And I really enjoy it as just a slow, incredibly slow on my end thing to do. I'm not one of those people who can knit and watch a movie just because I have to look at what I'm knitting, or I drop stitches all over the place and do other things. Maybe one day, but until then, I tend to put on an audiobook or a podcast or something, or some music, and just go in and do however much knitting I'm going to do. It's very boring knitting, maybe, I don't know. I've been knitting socks and just recently got really invested in the idea of doing a lightweight cardigan. I say recently, it's just my most recent project, but I've been working on it for months. Because see, again, slow knitter. So don't expect regular knitting updates from me is what I'm saying, because I might not finish this until November. Who knows? But it has knitting honestly is keyed into that desire and need for me to learn new skills constantly when I'm doing something, because the way I learned knitting was like, okay, here's how I knit, here's how I purl, and instead of making easy things, my next project was socks. And my first pair of socks isn't great, but it's wearable. And I've just gotten better since then as I made other ones and introduced other things to it, either new techniques I needed to learn in order to make them fit better, or lace. I learned how to do lace. Oh, I have leftover yarn from those socks because I don't wear a ton of socks that are really tall, so I had some leftover. I made some mitts because it was wintertime at the time, and I really enjoyed this pattern that I found on Ravelry. It was like a free pattern. I was like, yeah, absolutely, I'll try this. And so I learned to cable in order to do that pattern. And there's something so satisfying about making stuff and learning new techniques or getting better at a skill when you're doing it, but I can't just remake stuff. I get a little bit bored halfway through, and the next thing you know, I've wandered off onto another project for 6 to 8 months to 3 years, and I haven't looked at that at all. It's my own neurospice mix, I suppose, is the thing that is influencing the most there. And another new obsession I've had based on that, learning new skills, using skills I've had in the past, when I was in high school and college, I was never really into acting that much, but I loved doing tech work. I was in the scene shops, both high school, college, beyond. So building sets and making things has always been something I'm super passionate about. And so it's natural that when I looked around my office and got obsessed with turning it into like a fantasy train situation, that I needed a new workspace. My desk functions. It's got an interesting shape. I like it well enough, but it doesn't go with the vibe, and it's not nearly big enough for what I actually need. So why buy a desk when I definitely don't have enough money to get the kind of desk I really, really want to? And it would be so much cooler if I made my own desk. So I've learned a bunch of woodworking stuff in order to have a custom desk with inlays that I've made myself. And I will definitely be showing out some like that process, and it's just so fun and it's so cool and amazing, and I'm really, really excited about it. I'm excited to change up the spaces that I'm in to more accurately reflect who I am. I've lived here for a long time, and I'm looking around and I'm like, yeah, I've put some stuff up on the walls. I've kind of put my stamp on it, but not really. Most of my spaces could use a lot more of my own personality and richness and taking up space in my own world. And I'm excited to share that with y'all as well. So you can look forward to me taking my absolutely ridiculously cluttered and disorganized workspace and turning it into something more inviting, something that gives me more of those creative inspirations, surround myself with that so that every time I walk into my work, like my craft room, I can have more of that. I can have more. I can always want to go in there and be inspired by the things that I love. And I hope that you are also inspired to take your space, make it a little cleaner, and to make the things that you want to have in your world. Look around and see what part of that you want to iterate on. Or let me know in the comments, where do you get your inspiration? What is your favorite craft to do? I'd love to know. And if you've made it this far, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.